Steamlord the Ink Mechanic. Written by the Psychopath. Chapter 7. Sinking Feeling. Well, once the group had exited the mine, being careful not to disturb the few mining robots along the path, Ink reactivated his defense grid. The reasoning was that he did not want the Griffins to go against the deal he chose. It literally took several hours for the Griffins to agree to what the creature had agreed upon in mere minutes after passing through the hundreds of ways and tangents that could have been used. It took a lot of convincing and explanations from Steamlord and Twilight to let the Ink Mechanic go despite all the damage he had done. In the meantime, Sunrise was taking him within the ship along with Centurion. She wanted to get closer to the machine whilst teaching the mechanic about the better technology available to her and her father. SS had already uprighted the ship and corrected its position. Her control over the ship was still intriguing to Sunrise no matter how long she lived with that AI. Ink was rather hesitant to enter the ship, looking from left to right whilst inching along and grabbing the entryway. "It's okay, Ink. This is my home, there is nothing to fear."
"Are you sure? This being of metal seems rather aggressive in appearance."
Ink answered.
"The non-carbon based life form should know better than to comment on something's appearance."
SS answered.
"What? Who said that?"
"Sunrise, define this guest and intentions."
"He's here to come with us to Equestria."
"Am I to conclude that you have properly executed the task given to you?"
"Yes."
"Confirmed. What of our guest?"
"Well..." Sunrise slowly turned around to see the mechanic tapping some of the solid pipes running through the hole. He was not only trying to figure out where the voice was coming from, but also how this craft was so well built. He was only used to scraps after all.
"What is that voice, and how did you gain access to such refined materials? I must know."
Ink twisted around to look at Sunrise directly. His eyes seemingly scrunched from underneath as if showing a smile. Centurion was still in front of the entrance, its body facing the wall. It still stared at Sunrise from the corner of its ocular receivers. This was unnerving to Sunrise, who had to ask SS now that she was at the ship. "I will answer your question, but I first have to ask someone else something," she said to Ink before looking up towards the ceiling. "SS, why is Centurion so... scary? It's like his eyes are staring through me. Plus, you and Dad created him to be a weapon of mass destruction whilst..."
"The Knights are not? Totonic may have been initially built to show off my creator's skills in robotics and programming, but Hospitaller and Templar were designed solely for close warfare as well as anti-vehicle maneuvering. However, unlike the Free Knights, Centurion was designed solely as a unit of war. Its hull was specifically created and molded to intimidate so as to keep the undeveloped creatures of this world away from it as it shoots from a distance. Judging by how you feel, I would check the intimidation sequence to be a successful first initiative. It was also programmed with subroutines to give it fighting habits and actions. For example, it's staying in place straight like a statue while its ocular bionics stare at you from the corner of its viewport, along with the glowing red glare is an example. A secondary intimidative addition to its ocular bionics are the white dots that an organic cannot properly see. It is registered by your subconscious, bringing you a feel that it is watching you. These are the words and comments of Steamlord. Do not feel fear for it is not there to hurt you. Its mission is like that of the other three knights."
"So, that would explain why he's so creepy, but why did you build him solely for war? Do you plan on having a battle? Something my father left me out of? I am a dragon!"
"Yes, a dragon doing certain things behind her father's back simply because she has the genomes to adapt and compensate."
Centurion's eyes grew brighter as it seemed to narrow its view onto her face specifically. Ink didn't like the sound of that either. Sunrise gave off a nervous smile from over her shoulder. Don't talk about that, he might hear, she whispered.
He will not. My promises are held and kept like you beings seem to appreciate.
I would very much appreciate that you teach me more about this SS. I came to learn and I must do so or the deal is off.
The dragon sighed and rubbed her eyes in irritation. Fine, if you really need it. Sunrise nagged. The dragoness began to explain with as little detail as possible to the ink mechanic. She couldn't let him reproduce this technology, it could lead to problems when he returns to his home in the Griffin Mountains. Needless to say, the explanations amused him greatly. He was even able to somehow guess the correct methods of functioning in the ship that were nothing like what was in Equestria or in his constructs, if the analysis on that giant was anything to go by. What exactly was that robot that raised him? Where did it even come from? After negotiations were complete, Steamlord, Twilight and the three knights returned to the ship with a few snacks to accompany them during their trip back to Canterlot. Steamlord had given Centurion the order of observing and tracking ink in every and all movements and to report them to SS every 3 hours. This was to ensure that the stranger's actions and thoughts were closely monitored. Surprisingly though, the mechanic's incessant questions ensured that the trip ended up being shorter than expected. Security System was the first to remark it. Eventually, Steamlord became more interested in the origins of ink as no creature discovered yet in this world has had the technological prowess to create such a robot. Nevertheless, the return of Steamlord and Twilight was met with enthusiasm. The vessel was even greeted by Celestia, who was curious about what the events were. After all, no pony has dared to go into the Griffin territories because of their relative danger. There were even quite a few nobles standing behind the princess and poking their heads out like frightened foals. The roaring engines shut down and the door began to open. Ah, Steamlord, what news do you have for us? What was... The princess was immediately silenced after she saw an exploding black cloud erupt from the door exit and float about like stagnant dust. The nobles all screamed in terror and the guards lifted their spears and swords. As soon as the weapons were unsheathed, the mist spun around violently, then landed near Celestia. She remained immobile until a finger pushed her head from below and another grabbed her wings to stretch it.
This equine specimen possesses both a horn and a fully functioning pair of wings. The excessive muscular strength in the wings suggests that this is a leader of sorts, but it is too tall to be of the same species of equine as the tiny purple one.
Celestia was starting to get angry until she heard that specific part about the tiny purple pony. She batted ink away and asked him with a semi-frustrated face. Tiny purple pony? What do you mean? How do you know about her? Because she was a stowaway. She sneaked onto my ship before we could leave. By the time she showed herself, it was too late. Steamlord answered as he got off the ship. Twilight came towards Celestia with a red face of embarrassment. They ignored Ink's fascination of the simplest things such as the grass and bushes. He was even curious about the solidity of the buildings and constantly punched it at different areas. Twilight, I am very disappointed in you. I believe that Steamlord has already told you that he did not want you aboard his ship. Well, I just wanted to see and learn about other places. You could have asked me about... But no pony ever goes into the Griffin territory. This was a once-in-a-lifetime occasion. Sunrise intervened before Twilight's nervousness ruined her ability to dialogue. Princess, if I may, she was actually very skilled during this trip. She helped us out with one of his gigantic constructs that shot us down in the first place. She even convinced Ink to stop attacking the Griffins and share his mining resources. You were shot down? And I'm assuming that Ink is that creature who came a bit too close and personal and... who is punching the castle. Yes and yes. We will discuss the events in the castle if you will. I have much to report. Steamlord interrupted. Right, well, come in. Will your friend be joining us? No. Guards, watch the black creature and report any disturbing events back to me.
But it's licking a flower.
Sunrise facepalmed and so did Twilight. As for you, Twilight, seeing as you were part of this trip, I would like your feedback on the events as well. The Lavender Unicorn's eyes glittered with excitement as she began to accompany Steamlord and the others. However, Steamlord had forgotten something. He called his knights to him, but ordered his new creation to stand guard in front of the ship. Hearing a forthcoming of metallic stomps brought the ponies' attention to the ship. Many of them cringed when they saw Centurion, who preferred to ignore the retractable pathway and jump besides to slam heavily into the ground. Judging by the small height, the small crater it made showed that it carried much more on it than it should have. It walked forward and stood next to the pathway, only to remain static and follow every movement with its ocular bionics. Some of the guards stepped back. It had an entirely different aura about it than the other three. Even Teutonic, who had gotten the reputation of being extremely direct, violent and dangerous with the guard, wasn't as scary as this one. The Princess of the Sun stared at Centurion for a moment, only to have its gaze direct itself towards her. She was worried. I'll explain along with the report, Steamlord added as he went to push the princess along. Well, here you have the next chapter of Steamlord the Ink Mechanic, and if you liked it, hit that like button and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video. But before that, off to the brainwashing station! Come on, let's go, we're gonna have fun. Bye.